Hey everybody, here I'm looking at two Dynex 400W power supplies. I'll explain why I have two here shortly. Anyways, these are the power supplies you can pick up at Best Buy for $50. These are branded under Best Buy's house brand called Dynex. These power supplies are made by a company called HuntKey, in which is kind of a generic brand. You don't hear about them really much, but they're pretty decent power supplies. I'll give you my opinions on them. These are brand new power supplies, and they have a pretty good build quality. Normally when I review power supplies, I tend to open them up. I'm going to leave these closed because they may still be under warranty. You have a look here, you can tell that these things have good build quality. They have all the filtering components in place. I see filtering capacitors, I see the chokes, several chokes in there. And over here next to the plug, I can see a X capacitor soldered into place onto the plug. Here's a power switch. These aren't active PFC units, so they have a voltage switch for 115 to 230. And the weight of them, they are quite heavy. Okay, in terms of outputs, we have 28 amps on the 5-volt rail, 14 amps on the first 12-volt rail. We have 30 amps to the 3.3 volt rail, and on the second 12 volt rail we have 15 amps, minus 12 is 0.3, 5 volt standby is 2.5 amps, and the overall output is 400 watts. It's a version 2.2 power supply. Pretty good outputs, and especially considering there's two 12 volt rails in this thing. Not bad for a little 400 watt power supply. This power supply has all the connections sleeved up, which makes everything nice and neat. We have one 24-pin connection, which surprisingly, this power supply, rather than having a 20+4 connection here, it has a down converter that you plug in a power supply into, and it down converts it from 24-pin to 20-pin. This is kind of unusual. I'm not really familiar with this. Normally we have 20+4. I think it's just a little more, makes a little more sense that way, instead of having to include an extra plug that you can just lose and forget. Anyways, one main connection, 24-pin. This power supply also has a 4-pin ATX 12-volt connection. I'm kind of disappointed here because most power supplies nowadays include an EPS adapter, which turns from a 4-pin into an 8-pin connection. This is becoming a modern standard nowadays with a lot of computers. Hopefully Dynex and HuntKey will come to a resolution to get an 8-pin connection on here for CPU. Anyways, we have one PCI Express connection. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Molex connections, 4-pin Molex connections. And we have 3 SATA connections. We have, 3 SATA connections here, so we actually have 4. 3 here on this strand. These are for your hard drives. And we have an additional connector located on this wire strand for an optical drive. So that's basically it for the connections. Pretty decent array of connections for this power supply, but I'm still disappointed about that CPU connector. It should be an 8-pin adapter included. Anyways, here's the thing I'm going to talk about, and the reason why I have 2 of these is because I pulled these from parts machines I got at the Computer Works store. 2 parts machines that were like $20 a piece. There's one of them. It's an E-machine. And these are brand new, and evidently the people that had these computers had them serviced at Best Buy. So Best Buy installed these power supplies and their machines still didn't work. Well, actually, this one here, the motherboard works fine, and surprisingly, the Best Tech 250-watt 12V power supply didn't kill it. Anyways, this power supply come out of an HP, and now I'm back there come out of the E-machine. And I notice here, this is common with generic branded power supplies like this. I looked inside this thing, and I noticed that stuff like the capacitors and the fans were different brands in each one of the power supplies. I'm not exactly sure what the brands of capacitors are in each one of these, but they look quite different. Let me get a good focus here. You might be able to see. Get a look at that one capacitor. And let's have a look at this one here. Different brand of capacitors in this unit. Even the primary caps are a different brand. And the fans, this one has, not exactly sure. Let me see. Some weirdo brand. I can't even tell what the brand is. Some really generic brand of fan. And this one has a Zenrulian fan installed. I mean, it's a pretty common practice with generic branded power supplies to include different components in each unit. So evidently when HuntKey builds these power supplies, they basically just scrap of what's available on a shelf. You know? I mean, these are, I like the build quality on these. These are pretty good. They're not APFC, but they're still pretty good power supplies. But there's only one minor issue with these I'm kind of disappointed with. HardwareSecrets.com has tested these power supplies using a load, automated load, and kind of find out when you try to pull around 450 watts from these units, they fail with a bang, with a pop. So that means their overload protection doesn't work. So when you use these in your computers, be careful how much stuff you have in your system. I mean, rarely this will be an issue, but I mean, if you're running a quad-core Intel Core i7 920 overclocked to 4 gig, and you have like 6 or more gigs of memory and 3 or 4 hard drives and a high-end graphics card, don't use this power supply. I mean, common sense. I mean, if you got like a mid-range system, I mean, I think the mid-towered Lux will be a little too much for these power supplies, but let's say you have a system with probably a 65 watt or 95 watt dual quad-core CPU, and maybe a moderate graphics card or 3 or 4 hard drives, and some other things. These power supplies should work just fine. Anyways, that's my general opinions on these power supplies. I mean, it's not a deep review. I mean, if you want to look at a really deep review, go to HardwareSecret.com's review. I like it pretty well. They actually disassemble these things completely. Anyways, any questions or comments, let me know.